I'm Dr. Angie Stamm.
And I'm Kayla McGuire.
And this is Integrative Connections, a wellness community for pets and people.
Good morning. We are very excited to talk to Miss Brittany Massey and Hilary van Tatenhove of Oasis Equine Rehabilitation today. Welcome, guys.
Hi. Hi, thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Brittany Massey and Hilary van Tatenhove are sisters, and I'll let you introduce yourselves here in a sec, but they are teaming up and have just launched a new holistic equine rehabilitation program called Oasis in outside of Sacramento, California. And this is a very interesting concept that is new, and I'd love to understand and educate horse owners more about this program. So
awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Brittany, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know that you are previously known as a horse trainer, but kind of going more toward becoming more like a facilitator of the horse and human bond is kind of what you're moving into.
Yeah. So I've been a trainer for more than 20 years now. And
in the hunter jumper arena.
Yeah, in the sport horse world, I've shown dressage, I've evented, I've mostly concentrated on the hunter jumper circuit. At a pretty high level. I mean, we have kids that show nationally, we have kids that show regionally, get a lot of good awards, all that good stuff. So, that kind of brings to the forefront an understanding of what goes on in this sport horse world and why we need rehab. So I sort of bring a little bit of the why to the table because I see so many practices that are detrimental to the horse's well-being. And the reason I'm trying to move away from being labeled as a trainer is that I don't feel like that's what I do anymore. I teach horses, I teach people, but I want the horses and people to be my students. I don't want them to be my clients, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I want people to step into this wanting to learn about their own horses and producing a relationship with them. And then I want to be able to bring the horses along in a way that they can comprehend what the owner is trying to learn and then, keep the owner safe and things like that. And if that turns into something competitive, that's great. But that's not necessarily the end game for me anymore. So slowly transitioning.
I love that. I love that. It feels, because I've obviously been your client for over 10 years and my kids have, and it's been great to see the evolution of your program. And it really is evolving into a more holistic and emotionally centered practice versus just looking at a competitive goal, essentially. So that's great. So thank you. And Hilary, you have studied under Tom Mays, who we've interviewed.
Yes.
And so you're essentially a craniosacral practitioner for horses.
Craniosacral practitioner, yes. And I have a bodywork business, and I've had that for 7.5 years now. And kind of something that I found doing that is when I travel to different barns, I can help the horse, but it's such a small amount of information that I'm gathering. So I see that horse for 1 hour on one day, maybe every couple of months. And so Britt and I have been talking for a really long time. How can we not only integrate our two passions and our skill sets, but also see a full spectrum of what the horse needs and how I can feel like I'm helping a little bit more and also helping the clients, because a lot of times I go to barns to do body work and the clients aren't even there, which is nice on some degree because it's like the horse gets the day off and I get to see the horse by myself. But it's really hard to grasp all the information of what that horse has done, especially because I work in mostly the hunter jumper and dressage barns. And so they have a really hard job. They go to shows. And so sometimes I'm seeing them right after a show. Sometimes I'm seeing them when they've had a couple of days off. So it's like a mixed bag. And so I really wanted to have an opportunity to collaborate with veterinarians, farriers, my sister more. So not only I can learn more and gain more access to what I need to be doing and the skill sets that I need to have, but that we can sort of see more of an end result. Like if a horse doesn't necessarily have to be lame, but if they're body sore, I can write you a protocol for what you should be doing. Now, are you going to be doing that? Is the trainer on board with that? I don't know, because I'm leaving and I won't see you for another month or two. So having Oasis has been great. Even so far, we've only been doing this for 6 months, but seeing the results for the horses is so satisfying. For me, like selfishly, it's satisfying, but also for the horse, it's like they get to have a full letdown, or they get to experience, um, you know, a full rehab stage where their body and their mind can just, flourish. And so we've been talking about it for a long time,
Yeah,
but
like
Britt,
years.
but Britt now has this amazing facility where we felt like it would be worth it to pursue this new venture. Yeah.
So exciting. And I've been involved a little bit, coming down once a month or so and offering shockwave services to
Yes,
your horses, which is a really cool modality for managing chronic pain and injuries. So that's one of the tools that you're using, obviously.
Yeah.
Great. So, so this is obviously a very unique program in that nothing I've ever seen before in the rehab space, where you're really looking holistically at the whole picture, right? Not only the physical, but the emotional aspects of injury, injury prevention, or what you've termed prehab, right? And everything from hoof care to nutrition to all of those things, and even going into the first rides after the animal's kind of been rehabilitated. So maybe you could kind of walk us through like the general overview of your program and what that looks like for a new horse coming in.
Yeah. So I actually let Hill start on this because she actually does the initial hands-on. We do a consultation, which people can haul in for.
Or we could do it
or
over the
they can do it
phone.
over we can do it over the phone. We can do it via email. But once we get our hands on the horse, Hill's actually the first person that touches the horse. And so she goes through that. So I'll let you kind of explain what you're looking at.
Yeah, when we first meet with a client, we actually give them a package of paperwork to kind of fill out, which is self-reflective. So what are your actual goals and outcomes? Like, what do you actually want to do with your horse eventually? And some information on clarity and centering, and just what craniosacral therapy is and sort of what we do. So they can fill that out so they can self-reflect a little bit, because I think a lot of times people come in and the horse doesn't necessarily have to have an acute injury. They might, but they also just might just not be feeling quite right,
or have behavioral issues,
or have behavioral issues.
Is like there's a major behavioral issue. They think it's linked to pain. They can't pinpoint that.
And sometimes that just comes from years of confusion and frustration on the horse's part. So we try to get as much background information as possible. If they can send us vet reports, x-rays, which I'm learning how to read more.
We have a vet for that.
We have vets that look at, we do consult. Obviously, we're not veterinarians.
Yes.
But send us all the information so we can have a really good idea of maybe some of the issues, physical or mental. And then we get our hands on a horse. So usually the first couple sessions we have with a horse, we do together. So Britt will do some groundwork. If the horse cannot step over behind, if they cannot reach their shoulder out, if they get flustered, changing eyes, just really good information to have. It's just data collecting, basically. And then I go, okay, I can see them move, walk, trot, canter. They're, cross-firing behind, or they're frantic.
And if they are at a point where they cannot walk, trot, and canter, like we can't do that much groundwork, there are simple techniques that we can utilize to kind of assess that as well.
Yes. And then I'll put my hands on them. I'll palpate the whole body, distal limb, proximal limb. I'll do some stretching just to kind of see, is there symmetry? Is there asymmetry? What moves? What doesn't move? Because sometimes the horse is stiff and not moving well, and they literally have no like distal limb flexion, or one knee doesn't bend the same way as the other, or they're, if I palpate deep into the shoulder, it's like their brachial plexus is on fire and really needs to just settle. So what do we need to do? And then we look at their feet, we pick up the feet, we consult with the farrier. And usually this is like the first week that a horse would be with us. We do have,
and
sorry, go ahead.
No, and we data collect on what the horse has been eating. I find that a lot of horses are on high inflammatory diets. And so a lot of body pain comes from inflammation. And a lot of horses come in very thin.
Or fat.
We're very
Super
fat.
fat, yeah.
We have adipose tissue or we have ribs. There's really no in between. And so looking at the nutrition and seeing, you know, horses shouldn't be metabolic at 15 years old. Like that's not reasonable. Especially if they're not a heavy build, if they're not a draft, if they're not a pony, like that's not, we have so many Cushing's horses now. So really evaluating what they've been eating and then slowly transitioning them off of those high inflammatory diets.
Yeah, and we work with the Pro Series brand, which we've had a lot of good outcomes with because it's a
which I love.
Yes, it is a very basic, complete feed, and
it's organic, so we know it's certified. We know where it comes from, and we know how it's being milled, so we don't worry about cross contamination. We don't worry about things being in there that aren't supposed to be in there because they literally cannot package and sell it without it being cleared through the USDA.
So what is an example, real quick, of an inflammatory diet that you typically see horses being placed on?
So I'm not going to say any like brand names, but there's a lot of people that feed brands in the hunter jumper industry that are very high in corn, very high in oils, and horses don't have a gallbladder, so that's rough.
Particularly like refined vegetable seed oils, right?
Yes, refined vegetable
canola, vegetable oil.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And it says corn oil on the bags, but it's not like expeller press. It's not good for them anyways, but it's so also poorly accessed. It's, you know, it's not, and it's not bioavailable. Like even if you're giving an oil that is maybe good for them and is bioavailable, they're not processing it well. So let's just step from that a little.
They're not meant to be eating oil. Like they're
they're not supposed to eat oil. Their body is literally not designed for it. And then high sugar content, lots of starch, lots of sugar. And some sugar is good, you know, natural sugar is good for horses. No problem with that. But the NSC has to be reasonable. And what I'm seeing are horses are being worked extremely hard. Then to make up for the hard work, they're being fed what I joke is like rocket fuel. Like they have these very high caloric, very high fat, very high sugar grain diets, and then minimal forage. So they have one type of hay and that's all they'll eat. Or they will take them completely off of alfalfa. And alfalfa is actually really valuable to the horse's system. Not only does it provide minerals and calcium, but it also provides a buffer for their stomach. So if you have a horse that's ulcery, feed them a little alfalfa all day long. So, and they're also not feeding a variety. So let's say they're on like an orchard hay, that's all they're feeding. One orchard from one grower all the time. That's like us eating, might be broccoli, but that's all we're eating. And that's not healthy for a horse. They should be foraging around, eating tons of different things. So we offer a multi-forage diet. So multiple types of hay. All of our hay is tested. It is from the same grower, but we make sure that the protein and fiber and starch and everything is very like managed. And then we also know what it's lacking. So one of the things with Pro Series is that it provides basically the average 1,000-pound, 1,200-pound horse. It provides them with their daily, based on weight, their daily minerals, vitamins. They do a probiotic, postbiotic, prebiotic, and like just a gut balancer. So what you're basically doing is taking a horse off of high starch, high corn, high sugar, high fat, and you're eliminating that from the diet, but you do have to do it slowly because a lot of times they don't want to eat. You know, it's like if a kid's been eating Oreos for 3 weeks, they really don't want to have vegetables at dinner. Like they want their Oreos. So we have to slowly transition the horses off. But I find as soon as we get that transition, takes about 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks. The longest it's been for me is a month. Once we transition them off, they don't want the sweeter feed. They don't want, they're not interested. They kind of sniff it and they're like, because their body is literally rejecting what it used to crave because we've changed, you know, we've changed
the microbiome.
They literally are developing a new microbiome.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a detox process to that too.
Yes.
So sometimes we see horses, I mean, we haven't really seen this on a large acute scale, but like little hive breakouts or getting a little thin or they adjust to it and their body adjusts. And I think it's interesting because in the world of the sport horse world, I'm not so I don't know about like reining and cutting and I don't really know those industries as much. I would love to know more about what they do, but in the world that we understand, it's very much grass hay and then a million supplements.
That's the thing.
And so
aggressively over
the supplements and
Yeah.
what I found, I've even horses that have had like bladder stones, kidney stones, because
We
they cannot
we had one
process
stone.
all of this, well, processed
synthetic,
food.
well,
And-
synthetic vitamins and minerals too.
Synthetic vitamins, right?
Synthetic
Yeah.
vitamins. And, you know, it's like same with humans. You should know what you need to supplement, but don't over supplement, because we can just pee it out. It's a little bit harder for horses. They technically can pee it out, but their body is more fragile than ours.
Mhm.
And they are supposed to be on a very specific forage only diet. So what ends up happening is you take, you know, a brown warm blood gelding and you put it in a stall and you feed it grass hay, which can be very high in sugar depending on what cutting and where it's from. And put them on, you know, I've literally seen people that have 20 different supplements for their horse.
Wow.
And I just go,
And they have to add it to copious amounts of grain to get them
Yes.
to
To get
eat
them
it.
to eat it.
Yeah,
get them to
because
eat
they
it.
don't
Corn
actually
oil.
want it, because it's actually not good for their body, and the horse knows
right.
that.
Yeah.
If they're not eating a supplement, it's not good for them.
Right.
Right. And then
know.
they, you know, their whole body all day long is trying to metabolize everything that's going on. And it's like, well, let's just pull back for a minute, just take them off all the stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just put them on really good quality hay, start from there. And in California, we do need extra like vitamins and minerals because we're lacking that a little bit in the soil. But let's go basic. And that's what happens a lot of times too when horses come to us and we look at their feet. Sometimes we go, well, let's pull the shoes for a month, because they're in rehab anyways. It's not like we're going to take them out on a 50-mile endurance ride. Let's pull the shoes and let's see how they naturally walk and how the feet naturally balance. Because horses that have been shod from 3 years old to 15 never not had a shoe on their feet. You know, we are shaping their hoof, and maybe it's not growing in the correct manner that it should be growing in.
Mhm.
Maybe there's not enough blood flow. I see a lot of horses coming in that have really contracted heels or tight shoe jobs, just because, you know, we don't want the shoe to come off or whatever the case may be. And I'm like, can you feel your foot? Because it's kind of
Your shoe's a little small.
A little small there. It's like me
Yeah.
fitting into a size too small, you know. And then that works its way up through, you know, the soft tissue in the distal limb, and then they have to compensate in the body. And so
Everything starts in the foot, right?
Everything,
yeah.
And the
Exactly.
nutrition. That is
Internal,
the foundation, the feet and the
Yep.
nutrition. I totally agree. Yeah. So you'll do the intake, look at their nutrition, you'll start to transition the diet to a more anti-inflammatory, species appropriate diet. Look at the hoof care, rebalance the shoeing or start over altogether. And then where do you go?
So if we have a horse that has, like, let's say an acute injury or is clearly like dysfunctional or lame, then we'll have a vet come in and we work with a wonderful vet. She's sports medicine specific. Her name's Kelly Miller Jimenez. She's amazing. She's specifically done sport horse work. And so she comes in and she'll evaluate, like, what are we looking at here? She has the ability, we can ultrasound in the field, x-ray in the field, and we can get an idea, okay, is this just a little desmitis? Is this, do we have an old, you know, do we have bony effusion? Like, what's going on in whatever limb we're concerned about? And then we can have a protocol from her for that recovery.
Okay.
You know, and a lot of times it's really simple things. Like, we had a lovely horse that just had a little effusion, little discomfort, like low suspensory. Took a look at it, jogged him. She's like, look, let's not go crazy. Let's not spend this lady's money. Let's not make it nuts. Let's just shockwave him a couple times. Give him 6 weeks off, you know, let him do like a rehab, like walking rehab, and then gradually trotting, and see how that feels, because it's probably a sprain or a light strain. We don't need to MRI the foot. Like, we don't need to do a bunch of extra. Let's keep it reasonable. And at the end of that 6 weeks, if that downtime and the shockwave hasn't improved it, then we can do, you know, more in depth. That horse has been sound for months jumping now.
Amazing.
So
Sometimes less is more, right?
Less is more. I like a reasonable approach to that, because a lot of times when you start to x-ray everything and ultrasound everything, you're going to find problems that aren't the actual problem. And a lot of these horses just don't get any downtime. So we actually find that when the horses come in, if we can just give them a lot of turnout, a lot of quiet movement, a lot of stretching, and just a lot of relaxation, they're much sounder than when they arrive with no particular diagnosis and no particular protocol for rehabilitation. Because what we're running into is not that they're terribly lame, with a specific injury, but they're literally living in exhaustion and inflammation. So they just don't feel good all of the time, or they're chronically stressed. That's the other thing we look at, is what is their lifestyle in their current situation? Do they live isolated? Do they live where they don't have contact with other animals? How many days of hours of the day are they in a stall? Do they get turnout, or do they just stand and then go to work? Like, what are we working with long term, so we can give that owner a little more information when they do take their horse home of what they can do to improve that life for their animal and continue what we're able to produce here, which is a lot of movement, a lot of turnout, a lot of interaction. There's so many facets, and we have to look at kind of every single part to be able to give these horses the optimal outcome.
And to kind of piggyback off of that too, we have to be very realistic. If these horses are going to go back to a situation or a show barn that maybe isn't optimal or ideal, which a lot of them are not. And in California, like we were talking the other day, to have the amount of space you would actually need for each horse to have like an acre of pasture, to themselves. I mean, we're talking millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to purchase property for that. So I understand that that's not always realistic. So then we have to have the conversation with the owner and figure out a protocol for when these horses go home. Here's what you need to be doing with that horse. Here's some enrichment activities you can do with the horse, and then send it back to us for a checkup on X date. And so far, our clients have been amazing with that.
That's
clients,
really
students,
productive.
whatever we want to call them. It's been very productive. And we have one horse in particular who was with us for a while, went back to the training barn. She followed those steps, and then he kind of comes back in for like a weekly checkup. He'll stay with us maybe when she goes on vacation, and we can then reevaluate. Okay, you're doing a great job with this, but he's still getting really tense in the neck. Let's figure out if we need to do more shockwave, or maybe you need to buy posture pads and be doing that at home with him. Maybe he needs more trainer rides and less you ride. So we kind of have to be realistic about reality of the horse's life,
how they live.
And this isn't like a shame game or anything like that. This isn't like a judgment on how you've been working with your horse. This is more educational tool of like, let's just figure out how we can do better and move on from there. And
how do we work with the trainer?
And how do we work with the trainers?
And this particular trainer with this client is amazing, because her and I got on a phone call. I explained what we were doing. She was like, that all sounds great. I will do my best to reproduce that here.
On board. 100%.
And they've been super on board, and the horse has been really successful. So I feel like if people are able to just step away from some of the roadblocks that they put up for themselves and just kind of be more open to these ideas, I think they're going to find a lot of success with horses coming in semi-regularly to be checked in on, and then trying to reproduce some of the stuff we do here at home. They don't have to stay here full time. We can help people do this for their own horses in their own environment.
Right. So you will incorporate not only the nutrition, the farrier, the emotional enrichment, but also you'll do some various types of body work depending on what you feel is appropriate, whether it be massage, chiropractic, craniosacral, shockwave, that sort of thing, right?
So when our horses come in, if your horse is with us for a month, the monthly program, usually they're with us for longer than a month, but once a week, you're going to get body work no matter what. And a lot of that is I'm palpating and assessing as I go along, and maybe treating the cranial vault. Maybe it's more stretching. Maybe it's posture pads. We just installed a solarium. So a lot of the horses, and especially in the wintertime, get to stand under that. It's heated infrared. So it's super beneficial for them. We have ultrasound therapy, cold laser. We've got, quite a few tools to work with.
And we have a PMF practitioner on site.
Yes.
Which is great.
And then of course,
we have Angie who does our shockwave.
But body work is like standard. At least once a week, your horse is going to be seeing me for an hour, and then we chat about how the horse is doing.
The other thing that we will look at is like if a horse comes in and Hill does some body work and we feel like there's huge like education gaps for the horse, and part of the body is tense because they're emotionally fragile and they're struggling to understand what's happening. This can happen a lot with horses that have had really traumatic experiences, trailer accidents, crashing into jumps,
like
living
blunt force traumas,
traumas, things like that. We even had a mare that she had an injury and then had a baby, and her body was just really depleted and she was really struggling. She wasn't gaining weight. She wasn't, she was very crabby. She was just uncomfortable, and her owner's wonderful. And she's like, I just want her to be happy and comfortable, sent her in. And, we had to really think about that because we don't think about rehab after, they have their foals. We kind of just let them take care of themselves and to put them back to work. And she really needed that. She really needed that time and that care. So whatever has gone on with the horses, we also look at that emotional space and we say, okay, why are they so cranky in their stall, or why are they so horse aggressive, or why are they so blocked, like not wanting interaction with humans? And we start to assess that. So some of my work with them won't necessarily be work. It'll be going into the round pen and just being with them and maybe playing, or going into our smaller arena if they're sound enough to do this, and letting them gallop and play and interact with me in a way that's more fun for them and lets them express themselves and lets them sort of come out of their shell. Because we find a lot of horses are very shut down because they've had to protect themselves. So they just sort of take everything that's happening and they just sort of blank out because they compartmentalize what's going on, and they can just shut out the humans and shut out their things in their life so that they can survive. And so part of what we do as well is just letting them express themselves. So we see what that horse really has in them. Because a lot of times what they start with is not really who they are.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, there's a lot of horses that are jumping, showing, doing well.
Yeah.
And then we go to take them in the round pen or to do groundwork, and they have a super hard time articulating any part of their body. Super stiff, trip all over, cannot walk over poles, just these basic elements where it's like, okay, so you're just holding it together because you're a good boy or whatever.
Girl,
and you know your job and you know what you're supposed to do, but you don't have an injury yet. Guaranteed you will, because you're going to crash over a fence. You're going to, do something stupid in your stall because you're emotionally aggravated. And you cannot articulate in the way that your body should be able to articulate. A lot of horses can't back correctly. That's a huge sign of a body imbalance. A lot of horses we see are being used on flat terrain only. And so they're using certain muscle groups and completely not using other muscle groups, and also are not gaining strength in like their pelvic floor or their low back because of how they're being ridden. Again, no shame or judgment. It's just something
that's the reality.
That's the reality.
You have one arena and that's where you ride. That's all they see.
Right. And there's not a lot of, and some people are really great about this, but there's not a lot of barns that do cross training, for instance, like trail riding, or having like, let's say, a treadmill that you can put on an incline, or any sort of hill work, or knowing how to back your horse properly on the ground. It's just not in most hunter jumper and dressage barns. It's not part of their fundamentals. They have different fundamentals that they work off of. And so if we can give the horse some of that enrichment and some of that cross training, then we've seen that it really sticks with them. And if they can feel more comfortable in their body, so like posture and balance is huge. And that's what you should be starting off with anyways. But a lot of times that gets skipped over. So if we can add to the posture and balance, and they then feel, oh gosh, okay, I feel more comfortable in my own body, so that if I get to a fence and I'm a little short, I can manipulate my body and understand like how to use it a little bit more, so I'm not crashing into that fence. Or we deal with horses. There's a lot of off the track thoroughbreds that have kissing spine. Well, there's specific ways that you should be riding a horse that has kissing spine, so that biomechanically their spine lifts and that they can open up their neck and shoulder. So just it's so interesting, and it's great to be able to like collaborate on these things, because sometimes I'll go to a barn and I'll see something, but I don't watch the horse go all the time. So I can't see how it's presenting in real life. And so here we get the opportunity to do that. And we have a wonderful gal who helps us ride the horses if they're ready for that. And so Britt and I can watch video and then look at the video and then show the clients the video so that we can all be on the same page.
And we can be on the ground together watching the horse move. Because a lot of times if I'm sitting on a horse, which I do ride the horses as well, so I can feel what's going on. But I like that I have the ability to say, hey, can you hop on this one? Do exactly what I say when I say it. We're going to watch it go. Because we want to see what is actually happening. And I can't see that if I'm sitting on the animal. So we have this great opportunity. We also have someone that comes in and helps us with groundwork. And it's the same thing. We can watch the groundwork and I can say, hey, can you ask them to do this? Or can you ask them to back a half circle or whatever it is? And then we can mechanically watch the horse move. And then we can evaluate what we need to do next. And that allows us a lot of opportunity to make micro adjustments with the horses that have a huge impact long-term.
Because if they don't feel secure in their body, if they feel like they're unable to move, they're prey animals, then they get stuck and feel frustrated. And they either stand up and fearful, they'll either start standing up or they bolt because they just want to get away from the situation. And we also work a lot on like changing eyes. So horses, you know, if you're only working on the left side of them, which most of us do, because we mount from the left side, we tack from the left side, all that stuff. If we don't work on both sides evenly, when they are, you know, like say cantering on a cross country course and like a bag flies up behind them,
or even a person, a jump stands up.
A multitude of things that can happen right behind them, not in their line of sight. How are they going to react to that? So just, some of the basic fundamental tools of like what you would approach a young horse that's just starting out. Maybe they've skipped a lot of those phases.
A lot of those steps
or they've been traumatized. If they are an ex racehorse and they've been put in a chute and they've had an injury in the chute, a lot of pole injuries, a lot of tubercocci injuries, pelvic injuries from hitting the sides of the in gates or just
the starting
flipping
gates.
over in the wash rack. There's just a multitude of things that can happen. And sometimes when you're purchasing a horse, you don't even have that information. And so sometimes it's like they come to us and I go, this horse has had a pelvic injury.
And the owner has no idea because it's not disclosed. And sometimes it's never known. And then we go to investigate and there really is, you know, tissue damage, ligament tear, whatever the case may be.
And sometimes it's not a big deal as far as the injury itself, but it's the mental traumatization from the injury. So like pelvic injuries tend to heal pretty well. Wither, like horses that have flipped over and broken their withers, not a big deal. I mean, but to the horse and
flipping over is a big deal.
Is a big deal. So looking at that aspect, and as somebody who's been through like a traumatic accident and has a lot of continual rehab every day, it's like takes a toll on your mind because you're constantly thinking about, okay, how am I going to move? I can't go down those stairs because, and then I have to wear these shoes. And so the horses are also kind of in that state of, I got to protect myself and I already feel a little deflated. And so I'm going to get now defensive, or I'm going to, you know, rush fences when I jump, or I'm going to stop. Just say no. So that was a lot of like ranting.
And then the other thing that you've talked to me a lot about is that you, unlike a lot of traditional rehab programs, you don't like to use sedatives when you work with the horses, especially with under saddle.
Yep. So far, 100% success rate, no sedation.
Amazing.
And this is over multiple horses now. So I did it one-off horses for a long time in my own barn. Before Hill and I worked together, I would bring in rehabs for people. A lot of times they'd been to a rehab facility. They'd gone through all of the, you know, hand walking for, 10 minutes, trotting for 1 minute, blah, blah, blah. They'd gone to all that, and they were ready to go under saddle and nobody would ride them. And the trainers didn't want them back because they can be unsafe. And I've done a bunch of those one-offs here and there over the years, and I've done a lot of them. And one of my big things was I don't want to sedate these horses to get on them, because for me, a sedated horse is actually more dangerous to ride. Not only do they not have good proprioception, and I don't want them falling, tripping, whatever, but they can blow through that sedation. I mean, if their adrenaline gets high enough, you're in trouble anyways. So, and at that point, they're mildly sedated and they're on an adrenaline kick. And now you're really in trouble, because what if they're bolting and they can't feel what's going on and they fall? So for me, riding a sedated horse is far more dangerous than riding it as a horse that's fully in their body. And maybe will be a little bit playful because they've had time off. That's not the end of the world. Right. So we start with, we will put them like on the walker or on the treadmill to make sure they're warmed up and their body can handle a rider and that they feel good. We've done all of the groundwork and all of the emotional regulating work so that they understand, the horses understand, if you're with a regulated human, you are allowed to be regulated. Because a lot of times what happens is their parasympathetic nervous system is sort of on fire all the time because they're always having to regulate things around them. They're having to deal with dogs running around and kids running around and people running around and horse show environments, and it gets very frantic for them. And then they have a lot of humans that are dysregulated because they have a fear base on the ground or under saddle with the horse. Like, well, I don't want it to run me over. So, or I don't want it to buck me off. So we come to the horse with, we know you're not going to run us over. We know you don't want to buck us off. We understand that you want to be good. So let's give you the tools to do that. Let's make sure you're warmed up. Let's make sure you're comfortable. Let's make sure you feel safe with me, who I'm the one that's going to get on you. Let's feel safe with me or whatever rider. I have a girl that rides for me. She's incredible. Very regulated human, very calm, younger than me. So I really appreciate that she's willing to do some of these rehab horses with me, because as much as I don't mind riding one that can get a little silly, I'm not as young as I used to be. But when we get on them the first time, sometimes we just get on and sit on them. And we just pet them a bunch. And if they miss a few days of their walk, trot, rehab, that's not the end of the world. What we really need to do is get them feeling safe with a human being and feeling secure and feeling positive about the human horse interaction from their back, because that's probably where a lot of this injury started, or occurred. So get on, do a little walking, do a little bending. A lot of time I'll do it in the round pen. That way, if they do have trouble, I'm in a confined space that helps me stay safe and helps them stay safe. And it's already an environment that I've worked them in, so they feel comfortable. As soon as they feel good in there, they can do all of the exercises that I've asked. And if horses can't bend and turn, I don't get on them. I make sure that they can bend softly both directions, that they understand how to stay underneath themselves. Because I'm not big enough to pull up a 15-hand warm blood that's bolting. That's not like, I can't put myself in that position. So I arrange each ride in a way that is as successful as possible for the first 30 days. After the first 30 days, once the horses have started to understand the emotional regulation and then kind of the rules around us riding them, like, we will support you, but we won't let you take over. We won't let you be a bully. We won't let you push. We know you've learned to do those things. That's not innate in you, but you have to learn how we are going to ride you now. We won't pull on you, but you can't pull on us. Yeah. We won't kick you, but you can't run backwards. Like, there's things that we just set up for them. And then we have ways to help work around some of those habits. Like, I had a horse once that ran backwards off a mounting block. That was his thing. And he'd flipped over and hurt himself. And then I got to do his rehab and get back on him for the first time. So super fun. But you know what we did for almost a month? We just stood at the mounting block together for a month. Wow. And he didn't get his rehab rides. I hand walked him a lot, but he just stood at the mounting block. But when I sent that horse home, you could get on him from anything, a fence, a rock, a stump, a mounting block. It didn't matter, because we took the time. Because
that wasn't the issue.
That wasn't the issue. The issue was the fear he felt about us being on him. And in that moment of vulnerability, when the rider is getting on and you could really be hurt by a horse in a mounting block, you better make sure they know how to stand. Because that's a huge thing. So so far, a lot of success. And it's not that the horses don't play. It's not that they don't spook. It's not that they don't get silly. They're still horses. I don't expect them to stop being horses. And I understand they have a high level of energy because they're excited to come back to canter. They're excited to come back to trot. But, we're not going to walk over poles for the first time on their back. We're going to do that on the ground a lot before we get on and do that. And so we're going to set the horse up. We're going to do everything from the ground before we get on and do it in the tack, so that we guarantee the horse's understanding, our safety, and then finding very emotionally regulated humans that when the horse gets silly, we can take a deep breath, drop our heart rate, not worry about it, and allow the horse to do their rehabilitative process without being disassociated and medicated. So that's a
Yeah.
huge pillar of this program.
Yeah.
And
And
that circles back to the physical healing, because as we know from really any species, you cannot heal your body physically if you're in a sympathetic nervous system state, right? If you're not in a balanced nervous system, your body will heal,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's really the foundation of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is
one
super cool.
part of the, not wanting to drug them or sedate them is they do have to have a detox process after they're sedated. So a lot of horses that go to shows, let's say they go to a 3-week long show down in thermal and they are on decks or whatever that whole time, they have to then detox that out of their system later, which is very hard on their body. So if we can just, kind of not have to deal with that at all, that for their body, that's great. Because again, it has to do with like the nutrition element too. If we're giving them all this great nutrition and like a stable feed, and their body is learning to process that and work with that, we don't want to set that back by
don't wanna
then
change
giving
that.
them something. Now there's other things that we do for them, like Robaxin is a really great like a muscle relaxant for some horses that just have such tight tissue, that have a hard time
Chronic
letting
back pain.
chronic
Yeah.
back pain, things
But
like
we're not
that.
riding them. That's the other thing.
Right.
People will give Robaxin to ride them. We give Robaxin to let their back down. We're not going to ride them while they're actively on that. We're going to give that as a protocol for, let's say, 2 weeks. Give the horses those 2 weeks completely off to let their back heal. Then maybe do something like shockwave to encourage the tissue to heal internally. Then once they've gone through that process and we're not getting a palpation of soreness, then go back to the riding.
And I would say, like, in our Oasis program, we're not doing a ton of riding anyways. It's not really what it's about. I mean, we're setting the horse up to then go back to training, but if they've come to us from a show barn, they know how to jump. They're not going to forget their job.
Yeah. They're not training rides, they're rehabilitative.
Work. Right. Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So could you give me maybe 1 or 2 case examples of some really good success stories that you've had so far in your process?
Yeah, actually one yesterday, his rider just took her first walk, trot, canter lesson on him. And this has been a big one because this horse was so lame at the walk when he arrived. He had some prescriptive shoeing that was really detrimental. And he had multiple injections. So the joint spaces were being,
manipulated.
Manipulated and injected with steroid. And this is multiple over like a 6-month period. This isn't like multiple over years. This is like they were just trying to cool out this joint space. But the shoeing was very, very difficult for the horse. And it was systemic. It started in the foot, went all the way up into the shoulder. And he was just incredibly lame at the walk. Morbidly obese. I mean, really like on the verge of founder. Tons of adipose tissue, no balance. There were so many things happening. And then he was, they'd been quote unquote rehab riding him, and he was dumping people and scaring people and bolting and bucking. And, all of those are a result of the pain he was in, the medication he'd been on, because he was on a pretty consistent medication because he wasn't allowed turnout. And then the environment that he happened to come from was a little bit chaotic for a horse that didn't understand what was happening. And, the trainer at the time was doing everything she was being told. She was doing exactly as she was prescribed. Yeah. So this is not on the trainer, and this is not on the owner. They were doing exactly as they were asked. The issue was because I think the veterinary team and the farrier teams were not in concert. They were not necessarily in communication, and they didn't understand. They weren't watching the horse go. They were only seeing him come in here and there to a clinic, get evaluated on that day, and then go back and try to work through these things.
Right.
So
which is typically the case in most scenarios.
Very typical.
Unfortunately.
And a lot of communication necessarily, except for a vet write-up, which is hard for the average person to read.
Right.
So he came in, and the owner was very open. She basically said, look, we bought this horse. He hasn't been sound. Do what you got to do, because he's not sound now.
Yeah.
So
we love him, and we'll do whatever.
And we'll love him, and we'll do whatever he needs.
And he's been with us for 5 months, and he is super sound.
Yes.
And very, he came in which I understand, kind of spooky and tentative about things because he didn't feel well in his body.
Yeah.
And he's super sound, super relaxed. He ground ties in the cross ties. He's an angel to deal with.
Sweetheart.
He's still working on some balance and
Yeah.
he's now gonna be getting more fitness.
And he's still a little round, but we've gotten probably 250 pounds off of him.
Yeah,
Like he was really, really fat.
right.
And
He's feeling so much better.
he feels better in his body. He's on normal turnout. And he's one that we pulled his shoes immediately. I was like, look, we got to see what his feet are going to actually do.
Yeah.
And his feet broke off. They had to kind of reassess. We left him barefoot for 2 months. Then we put him into glue-ons. Then we put him back into regular shoes. He looks amazing. He's had Shockwave with you, I think 3 or 4 times now. Like we had to work from the foot up. The carpus was really sore. The elbow was sore. The shoulder was sore. The low neck was sore.
His knee was chronically swollen.
Yeah, I had a lot of chronic swelling. But he literally did his first ride. And then we've been riding him 2 to 3 days a week. He goes lightly. Yeah.
Very lightly.
But some of that was just getting him to not bolt around with a rider.
Yeah.
Like he was so fearful and sort of unsure. And this is a horse that was jumping 1.30 m in Europe. This is not a horse that was green. He's 12 years old. And he was imported and then started having these kind of issues. And he's mentally so much more stable. He can handle being in for a few days in the barn with rain and still go to work and really keep his life together. He's still a little spooky. I think that might be, he's one of those horses that's just hyper aware. But now if he has a little spook, he immediately comes down. He doesn't bolt. He doesn't buck. He doesn't panic. He goes, oh, that frightened me, but my rider's got me. Sorry.
Right.
My bad. I was going to save us both, but I realized I don't have to. Like he's starting to get that going. And his owner, I mean, the kid's only like 15, like she's really young and she's really loves this horse. And she's, she's had a horse for a year. She hasn't been able to ride for a year.
And she deserves something safe.
Yeah. And she deserves a fun, safe horse. So she got to take her first real lesson on him yesterday. We've been doing groundwork. We've been doing some walking work, but this was the first time we could like walk, trot, canter. She got to really feel what he feels like. And he had one little spook and he just sort of kind of popped off the rail and then settled. And she was like, oh my gosh, he didn't run off with me. And I said, yeah, he's not going to do that because we are not going to put him in a position that he feels he has to get away from us. We're going to support him when he's afraid. And man, it was like, and her mom was so sweet. She texted me after and she said, thank you so much. My kid's so happy. This was such a great day.
And that's why we do.
And that's why we do this.
That's exactly.
In a 5-month period, this horse went from,
literally couldn't walk.
Yeah. I mean, so sore to really enjoying himself. Like, I think he's enjoying the work. He's enjoying the time with this. He loves this kid. They're a great match. And I'm just like, that's what we're doing. And the fact that that can happen in a 5-month period is amazing. And it just, to me, just highlights how much these horses want to heal and how good they want to be.
And such a good learning experience for us because with specifically his feet, when they came in, I don't even know the degree of wedges, but it was
like a 4-degree wedge. It was huge.
But anyways, so
many things.
Crazy shoe job. You just looked at it and you're like, that must have cost a lot of money today. So when we stripped the shoes off and you could actually see the angles of the hoof, it was quite mortifying. So to us, that just kind of reiterates that like the wedging system does not fix anything. It is a band-aid for what is going on. Right. So wedging a hoof, you can do corrective shoeing, but the wedges should be absolutely temporary and should be done so incrementally because we took the shoes off, the heel was on the ground, the toe was super long, it was chipping everywhere, the hoof health was really poor.
Which goes back to the nutrition a bit.
And that he was also 250 pounds overweight, so he's then trying to support his fat body in these feet that aren't comfortable. But to see it and then to see the transformation is like, okay, simpler is sometimes better. And let's just work on the correct palmar angle. I mean, just pulling the toe back a little bit and giving a little bit of support. And I think we did glue-ons.
We did glue-ons for like
a couple months,
6 weeks or 8
because
weeks.
he had no hoof wall. His zero hoof wall. Like you could not. I don't know how they nailed these shoes on.
Yeah.
So it was just, not to throw anybody under the bus. That's not the point. But what came to us was a horse that, in those shoes would never stay sound.
But you needed
You
not, but
really,
in that scenario, you still needed this whole holistic
yes.
perspective of healing, because it wasn't just a matter of correcting the shoeing. It wasn't just a matter of correcting the joint pain. It wasn't just a matter of getting his nutrition corrected. It wasn't just a matter of getting the emotional stuff regulated. So you had to go through all of those things, all of those pieces, and nobody else does that. That's the whole point of this, is like, you guys do what nobody else does. You are the whole package, which is so cool. Right.
We're trying. And we don't have a crystal ball. So some of this for us, because this has never been done before, we don't have a script for this stuff. Like we are doing this intuitively a lot of times.
Right.
And we're doing this based on experiential and collaborative, a group of people who want to see this work and want to see these horses happy. So we are collaborating with vets, farriers, body worker, trainer. Like we're trying to pull in all of these people and say, okay, let's not have too many cooks in the kitchen, but let's get on the same page about what we can do for the horses.
I love that.
And we don't have a crystal ball. I even told the people with this particular horse, I think we can get him sound. I feel very positive about that, but I do not guarantee it. We will do everything in our power that we know how to do. And if he comes sound, I also don't know that he'll ever go back to doing that big jumping job. There's a lot of damage. But could he do a low job and be great for his kid? Probably.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we have to also look at this as this is somewhat experimental at this point, but it's experimental with a lot of experience and knowledge behind it. And we're not trying things that are going to be detrimental to the animal long term. We're not injecting it with anything. We're not giving it special medication or sedation. We're simply stripping back some of the excess and seeing at the core of each horse what we really have to work with.
And I think one of the biggest things,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, one of the biggest things for me as a body worker and what I always try to do is the most non-invasive approach first. So we always start with like very little and then add. So I think if you have that approach, you can go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. And 2.5 is where we're good. Instead of like, well, let's just throw everything at them.
Stop before you overdo it.
Yeah. And it's also a hard way to diagnose something when you're just throwing the kitchen sink at them. You kind of have to start slowly and go through the process and say, like, this is a really big deal for this horse today. I didn't think that, stretching whatever would be this big of a deal, but for him emotionally it is. Okay, let's take a couple steps back and think of why. Oh, the iliopsoas, that's what the connection is, and deeper rooted in that, like what chakra is that, and then so we go from very woo-woo, like we have an animal communicator that we love to use, and maybe woo-woo is not a great term, but we have, because I really believe in like subconscious work with the animals. So we have that all the way to, like our lameness vet doing lameness exams. And
so for clients, horse owners, veterinarians, horse trainers that are not local to you guys, you do have future plans to do some online educational platforms as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Working on that. We're not the most technical people, but yes, we are working on that, giving snippets, and we will be traveling to different, like we want to do a trip to Oregon to do some clinics. We're able to travel to do some hands-on clinics.
Great.
We've gotten very busy in the last 6 months. We didn't realize that the business would take off quite in the way that it has. Yeah. And so we, right now we have 8 full-time rehab horses, and we have horses that trickle in for like a week here, a weekend there. Or what? Yeah. So we have to find the time frames to do that, but we would love to be able to reach from more afar. And we also wanted to set up the facility in a way that during the winter months, when you have like the Pacific Northwest, horses in Canada, horses in Montana, who might not be able to, their winters are kind of rough. If they need to come down to us, we have all the things. Everything's covered arena, covered round pen, covered Eurosizer, covered treadmill, covered solarium. Like we have everything here plus California winters, but we have the
year-round capability to do the work.
Year-round capabilities. And so people who are like, oh man, my horse has to have like basically 3 months of downtime. We'll send them to us for the downtime because they'll go back feeling amazing. Yeah. And, and we have some Bay Area clients who they send their horses to us and they might come out like every other weekend to participate in a lesson or a clinic or something like that. And that flows with their schedule, and that's just what they opt to do.
And long term, we would love to have where we can do some remote consulting where people can do a short video and we'll give specifics of what that video needs to include. And then a write-up of their horses. You know, basically we'd send them our package digitally. They fill everything out and then we read through it, watch their video, get some more information about their horse. And then, you know, it is harder not being hands-on, not touching the horse, not feeling the energy coming off that particular animal, but we can at least give some starter information, especially as far as like the nutrition goes and the daily enrichment and lifestyle for the horse. And then be able to give those people some options. So if you live in Delaware and you're not going to be able to get your horse out here and we can't get to you, you can send us some information. We can go through that together, and then we can keep you on a journey. Like once a month, we check in with you and you send us some, you know, some positive feedback, some negative feedback. Tell us what's working, tell us what's not working, and let us help you kind of work through that. I think that that's going to be the long-term goal so that we can get as much information out. And as we learn more, like we're learning every day, these horses are incredible teachers. So we're learning every day what works and what's not working. And things that maybe I thought 5 or 6 years ago were really important, I'm letting go of because they're not important to the horses. They're important to humans, but they're not important to horses. So I'm, you know, staying open to that stuff and then being able to share that information as we grow is going to be massive. And we will eventually have an online platform that will be like a subscription base, essentially, that people can watch videos. So if they have something specific, we'll have a category for, you know, foot basics, you know, basic body work anyone could do at home. Basic handling techniques anybody can do with their horse, so that people can tap in and go, oh, you know, I've always wanted to know how to stretch my horse really correctly. I know about carrot stretches, but I don't really know if I'm doing them right. Or I know about stretching legs, but I don't know if I'm doing it right. We'll have a whole series for that. So we're slowly getting those videos organized. It's just, we started this on accident in July. We didn't mean to start until we really weren't going to start till January. And so we started in July and it's just kind of snowballed. So we're sort of catching up now. And so we'll slowly start getting all that content available.
Exciting. Well, I'm super excited for you guys and here to support you any way we can. And I'm sure we'll check in with you guys in the future and give updates. And people can find, you have a website?
Yes.
Which we'll link to.
OasisEquine.com.
Great. We'll link that to the podcast. And thank you again for being with us today. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Angie.